Good evening everyone. Welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. Today is 8th June 2025 and today we have some very important topics for the discussion. So without any further delay, let's get into the discussion and let's try to understand all these important news articles in a very detailed manner, so that this discussion will be helpful for your prelims and mains examination. So without any further delay, let's get into the discussion. So the first topic that we're going to start this discussion is with the eruption of Mount Etna. And we all knew that the Mount Etna's volcanic eruption is very often in news. And in fact, UPSC prelims examination, there are very often questions which are based on the location. And in fact, so this year also UPSC has asked about the location based questions, particularly about Italy. So therefore, expecting a such question in future, so we have framed an important topic, so that is the eruption of Mount Etna. So in fact, this Mount Etna is very often in news. So therefore, it is important for us to understand the volcanic eruption of Mount Etna, the nature of Mount Etna and its important characteristics. And in fact, Mount Etna is located in a place called Sicily in Italy. So you have to remember, for example, UPSC may ask you a question that Mount Etna is located in which country? So it is located in Italy. Secondly, Sicily would be given, matching with Italy, right? So Sicily is a place which is located in Italy and Mount Etna is located at a place called Sicily. And Mount Etna erupted on June 2nd, 2025. However, Mount Etna actually has a long volcanic eruption history, right? So it has a long history of activity. So this is not new that the Mount Etna erupted for the first time. This is not the case, but Mount Etna has a long history of volcanic activity, and this recent eruption of Mount Etna is considered as another chapter in the volcano's long history of activity. And in fact, so it is being held that there was no significant casualties, or authorities have also confirmed that the eruption posed no immediate threat to the nearby residents. Generally, what happens when such volcanic eruption took place? So it disrupts the normal activity. It also causes a huge destruction, a huge evoke in the areas near around these volcanic eruption. So therefore, the authorities have already confirmed that there is no immediate threat to the nearby residents. However, the alert level in Catania airport was raised due to the ash clouds, because whenever such a volcanic eruption takes place, there would be a huge ash cloud that is dispersed all across the clouds or all across the sky, and that could actually disrupt the normal activities. So therefore, it has actually reached several kilometers into the atmosphere. And in fact, the eruption has concluded by afternoon. So volcanic eruption, generally in some volcanoes, if eruption takes place, it continues for days. But with respect to Mount Etna, it just concluded by afternoon. So this indicating that Mount Etna is very dynamic in nature, right? So you have to understand this. So Mount Etna has a long history of volcanic activity, and Mount Etna is also very dynamic, and in fact the volcanic eruptions frequently takes place, and it is located at a place called Sicily, which is located in which is located in Italy. So you just have to understand these facts. Now, other important facts with respect to Mount Etna: it is a World Heritage Site. We all knew that UNESCO designates any site as a World Heritage Site. For example, if it has historical, cultural, natural significance. So therefore, Mount Etna is also having a recognition by the UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, and Mount Etna is considered as one of the most active volcanoes all across the world. So if you look at all volcanic mountains around the globe, Mount Etna is one such volcano which is most active. So most active in the sense that very frequently volcanic eruptions used to took place or takes place. So in fact, the documented eruption of Mount Etna, so the history spanning from over 2700 years. So you can imagine that how long the volcanic eruptions have been frequently takes place, right? So in fact, Mount Etna also holds one of the longest records of volcanic activity, or one of the longest histories of volcanic activity, and it stands approximately around 3300 meters height, right? So this height is around 4 times taller than the Burj Khalifa that is located in UAE. So this Burj Khalifa is also having the designation that this is world's tallest building. Now, what are the basic characteristics of Mount Etna? So it is also important for us to understand the basic characteristic, because there might be questions which could be framed around the Mount Etna, not just its location. So therefore, Mount Etna is classified as the stratovolcano. So there are some volcano types, and one such volcano type is a stratovolcano. Now, what does the stratovolcano actually means? So these stratovolcanoes are generally conical in shape, right? So they are just conical in shape, and in fact these stratovolcanoes are formed from the viscous lava that accumulates around the vents. So in fact these vents are located inside these volcanoes, right? So in fact they are conical in shape, and they are having the viscous lava, and this viscous lava would accumulate inside these vents, right? So this is the characteristic feature of stratovolcanoes. Stratovolcanoes have these characteristic features. Now in fact, this type of stratovolcanoes, so they generally account for around 60% of all individual volcanoes on the earth. So if you take all individual volcanoes on the planet earth, so 60% of all volcanoes are the stratovolcanoes, and Mount Etna very frequently exhibits both effusive as well as a Strombolian eruption styles. Now we will also understand what does effusive and Strombolian eruption styles. Now when we talk about the effusive eruption, so it actually involves the lava flows, right? So it actually involves the flow of lavas outside the vent of these stratovolcanoes. But the Strombolian eruption types, so it is being characterized by explosive activity. So there are some volcanoes which are too explosive. Whenever the volcanic eruption takes place, they are very explosive, right? So therefore those explosive volcanic types are considered as a Strombolian eruption styles. However, whenever there is a volcanic eruption and that is associated with the lava flows, it is considered as effusive eruption style of stratovolcanoes. Now you can see here, so this is a place where Mount Etna is located, right? So this is Italy, right? So this is Italy, and this is place called Sicily, and at Sicily Mount Etna is located, right? So I hope you have understood this, right? So the location is also very important, and also remember that this is surrounded by the Mediterranean Sea as well. Now you can also see that whenever such volcanic eruption took place, so the ash would come out of the volcanic eruption, right? So it can cause respiratory problems, and it can even trigger the lightning in the atmosphere as well. And in fact water vapor is also emitted from the volcanic eruption, and it even contributes to the greenhouse gas effect on the earth. So remember this, that UPSC even asked a question on this: whenever volcanic eruption took place, what are the gases which are emitted by these volcanic eruptions? So generally whenever such question is being asked, that you have to mark all, because there is a possibility that even a small quantity or small percentage of that gas would be emitted whenever such a volcanic eruption took place, right? And apart from that, the carbon dioxide, again a very important gas or a greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. So this also released into the atmosphere through the volcanic eruption, and it contributes to the global warming. And even sulfur dioxide, so it dissolves in water vapor to form a damaging acid rain. And hydrogen sulfide, it is highly toxic gas that smells like a rotten eggs, right? So these are the important gases that are being released out of the volcanic eruption. And apart from that, there are some other facts which are also given about the volcanic eruptions, right? So around 20 active volcanoes which are erupting very frequently, and in fact there are some volcanoes which are considered as super volcanoes, so they can plunge the world into an ice age as well, because whenever such a volcanic eruption takes place, they can cover the entire atmosphere and they can even block the solar radiation. So that's how they can make the entire earth again an ice age. So those volcanoes are considered as the super volcanoes. However, in fact, the volcanoes are the sources of important materials because they can release metals, precious gems and other construction material. And these volcanic eruptions are also the sources of power generation on the planet Earth, and in fact they are also very rich in volcanic soils, which suits the cultivation of a number of plantation crops. So I hope you have understood about the Mount Etna and its nature, its characteristics and its location. So this is very important from the exam point of view. So the next topic is bacteriophages to combat antimicrobial resistance, and we'll understand what exactly is this antimicrobial resistance and what are these bacteriophages and how these bacteriophages can be used to combat antimicrobial resistance. Now the context is that due to antimicrobial resistance, the world is now rediscovering the bacteriophages, and much relevant research is ongoing in many countries. Now, so first of all, I would like to explain you what is antimicrobial resistance. So antimicrobial resistance is that the existing pathogens, whether it is bacteria, virus, fungi, so the existing pathogens developing resistance against the medicines that we have been using, so that is considered as antimicrobial resistance. Imagine a person who is infected with the tuberculosis, which is caused by the bacteria, and the tuberculosis causing bacteria, if it develops resistance against the medicine, then the medicine would be no longer helpful to treat this particular disease, and ultimately it would lead to the mortality of the individual who is infected with the tuberculosis. So therefore, antimicrobial resistance is a very, very serious problem the world has been facing now. So therefore, bacteriophages, so these bacteriophages are actually the viruses. So they are the viruses which feed on bacteria. These are the viruses that feed on bacteria, and they are considered as the bacteriophages. And in the backdrop of rising antimicrobial resistance, these bacteriophages are much relevant for the research to combat this antimicrobial resistance. How? So we are going to understand this. And in fact, as I have already explained you what exactly is antimicrobial resistance, so this is a resistance of a microorganism to an antibiotic that we have been administered to. So that was originally effective in treating infections caused by it. And now in this case, imagine TB, tuberculosis, right? So resistance of a microorganism. So tuberculosis is caused by bacteria, and now the resistance of TB causing microorganisms called bacteria to an antibiotic that is generally administered to us, that was originally effective. So originally it was very effective, but over a period of time this bacteria has developed the resistance to this particular drug, right? So ultimately making it ineffective, and this would further develop in the already infected person. Now, why India needs to curb the antibiotic overuse? Because overuse of antibiotics would make these pathogens develop the resistance and ultimately making them ineffective. Now, in fact, in India, bacterial disease burden is highest in the world, right? So if you take all countries together, so in India, the bacterial disease burden is highest. So therefore, we need to curb the antibiotic overuse firstly. Secondly, the large population in India suffers from diseases like diabetes, heart ailments, cancer, so thereby making them more and more prone to these infections. And even 40% of the children are malnourished and risk of facing infections, right? We all knew about the stunting, wasting, malnourishment, right? So therefore, they are the easy targets of developing the antimicrobial resistance, and in fact more and more drug resistant bacteria are being identified as well. And in fact, overuse of drugs, overuse of antibiotics, so all these factors have been leading to the growth and increased levels of the antimicrobial resistance, and that makes the traditional medicine largely ineffective. Now, when we talk about the bacteriophages, now bacteriophages, as I have already told you, that they are viruses, but these bacteriophages can also be called as good viruses. Remember, this question may be asked in your prelims examination as well, because UPSC has a trend about asking such type of questions. Earlier UPSC asked about the Wolbachia, right? So Wolbachia also asked by UPSC, right? So that is a natural method of controlling the mosquito population that can be used. But here, this is how the bacteriophages are actually look like, right? So these bacteriophages are viruses, and they can also be called as the good viruses. These are the viruses that actually prey on bacteria, right? So that actually prey on bacteria, that means they actually consume or eat bacteria. And in fact, so it is being said that this bacteriophage is all around us. They found in water, they found in soil, and they even found in human body as well. And in fact, these bacteriophages are also believed that they are 10 times as many as the bacteria on the earth, right? So the bacteriophages are 10 times as many as the total bacteria on the planet earth. So therefore, these are much more useful when it comes to treating diseases which are primarily caused by the bacteria. So unlike an antibiotic, for example, if we are infected with a bacteria, right, we consume the antibiotic, right? So unlike an antibiotic, so that may be used to kill many species of bacteria, phages may only kill a few strains of a particular bacterium, right? So in fact, the bacteriophages, right, so in fact these phages may only kill a few strains of a particular bacterium. So that means that these may not kill all bacteria types. Now all bacteriophages are actually composed of a nucleic acid, and this is how, this is where the nucleic acid is found in a bacteriophage, right? So all bacteriophages are composed of a nucleic acid molecule, and that is being surrounded by a protein structure. So this nucleic acid would be surrounded by a protein structure, and the nucleic acid may be either, it could be DNA, or it could be RNA, or it may be either the double stranded, or it may be a single stranded, right? This is the single stranded, and it could be a double stranded as well, right? So this is the characteristic feature of bacteriophages. So I hope you have understood about this bacteriophages. Now in fact, there are two main strategies, and that have been very often and very frequently used in treating the patients using the bacteriophages. So remember that These bacteriophages are used for the treatment of various diseases which are caused by the bacteria, because bacteriophage prey on the bacteria, right? So therefore, in this context, there are two main strategies that have been used in treating patients by using bacteriophages. So one is isolate the bacteria from the infected tissue, check which phage works against it. For example, imagine that a human being is infected with a particular bacteria. So in this case, I would take TB, tuberculosis. Now what we have to do, we need to isolate the bacteria from an infected tissue. So imagine that from an infected tissue we have separated a bacteria. We have isolated the bacteria from the infected tissue and check which phase is actually works against it in the lab. And once you found out, so grow more of that phage and administer it to the patient, right? So that would be enough. So apart from that, so these phages may come from the phage bank as well. So phage bank of one's own, or in a very serious cases, one may even ask a phage banks elsewhere in the world for the help as well, so that we can find a suitable bacteriophage to treat the bacterial disease, right? So these are even considered as the natural phages as well. Second, there would be a genetically engineered phages as well. So with respect to the genetically engineered phages which have been modified in the lab to expand, right? Because genetic engineering is a method that can be used to produce a genetically engineered organisms, genetically engineered bacteria on a large scale, and then expand the variety of bacteria that can actually kill, right? So these are two different types of bacteriophages, right? So one is natural bacteriophage, second is genetically engineered bacteriophage that can be used to kill the bacteria which actually cause various diseases among the human beings. So what are the uses? So it has multiple uses. For example, phages have been used for burns, foot ulcers, gut infections and respiratory infections, and even urinary tract infections as well. So for these important diseases, so these are diseases, bacteriophages can be actually used. Next is a drum web app. So there is an important article that has been given in the Hindu newspaper, right? So that has been given in the Hindu newspaper, so about this drum web app. So we'll try to understand what exactly is this drum web app, who developed it, and what is the importance of this drum web app, particularly in the context, in the backdrop of growing levels of pollution and the increasing levels of pollution and its impact on the human health. So the ambient air pollution is actually responsible for 7.2% of all the deaths in major cities every year, particularly in the metropolitan cities. So this has been indicating that the air pollution is a cause of concern, right? Because it has been causing around 7.2% of the deaths in major Indian cities every year. However, there's a reason to believe that the airborne particulate matter can cut the life expectancy of Indians of up to 5 years. But the traffic related pollution is usually much worse than what the urban sensors actually report, right? So therefore, there's a high levels of pollution that these urban sensors are not able to report it properly, right? So there's a reason to believe that the airborne particulate matter can cut the life expectancy of Indians by up to 5 years. However, so researchers have estimated that commuting takes up only around 8% of the person's day, but accounts for 33% of their pollution exposure, right? So therefore, it has been indicating that so commuting takes up only around 8%, just 8% of person's day, even though it accounts for 33% of the pollution exposure of that individual. So therefore it has been indicating that whenever a person is commuting on the road, he is exposed to around 33% of the air pollution on a huge scale. So therefore, because of that reason, the mortality rate is also very high due to the air pollution. So therefore there is an imminent need to reduce the air pollution levels, or to suggest the routes which have a lesser air pollution levels. So to find out a solution for this, recently IIT Kharagpur associate professor and students have created a dynamic route planning for urban green mobility, so which is also called as a DRUM web app. So DRUM actually means a dynamic route planning for urban green mobility web app. Now about DRUM web app. So this DRUM web app is also like a Google map, right? So I hope every one of us have used the Google Maps for commuting from one place to another place. So therefore these are also like Google Maps, but with added feature of allowing users, so they can actually pick routes based on air quality and energy efficiency. So it actually shows multiple routes, and among those routes there are some routes which have good air quality, and they can also save a huge quantity of energy as well while commuting on those routes, right? So as I have already told you that only 8% of the daily times is being spent on commuting, but 33% of the total pollution level they are exposed to during this 8%, right? So if they travel on the roads which have a better air quality, so this exposure can be substantially reduced. So this is the first advantage of this DRUM web app. And in fact this DRUM web app gives users a 5 route options. For example, the shortest route, the fastest route, and least exposure to air pollution level, and least energy consumption route, LECR, and a combination of all 4 factors called the suggested route, right? So therefore this DRUM web app would actually suggest 5 route options, and it was designed to fetch live pollution and traffic data the moment a user entered a route instead of pulling data at intervals, right? So therefore this could be another advantage, right? So whenever a user started using this DRUM web app, it actually shows 5 route options. So these 5 route options can be shortest, fastest, and least exposure to air pollution. So such 5 routes would be shown to him. So it was designed to fetch the live pollution and traffic data the moment a user entered the route instead of pulling data at intervals. So it even determines the routes using the graph hopper, so which is a Java based routing library that generates multiple options while fetching real-time traffic updates from Mapbox. However, the data that is used by the DRUM web app is collected from the Central Pollution Control Board and World Air Quality Index. This World Health Air Quality Index is released by the World Health Organization, so you should remember that thing. So they implemented a segment-wise interpolation strategy. So this segment-wise interpolation strategy to estimate pollution levels in areas without direct air sensor coverage, and divided routes into segments, used nearby sensor data to estimate pollution where coverage was missing, right? So therefore what they will do is that a segment-wise interpolation strategy. So this segment-wise interpolation strategy would be used to estimate the pollution levels in different areas without having a direct sensor coverage. There's a possibility that these areas may not be covered with the sensors to accurately measure the pollution levels. So therefore they would use the segment-wise interpolation strategy. And in fact, so this would be divided into different segments and used nearby sensor data to estimate the pollution levels where the sensor coverage was missing, right? So this is called as the segment wise interpolation strategy. And this test, So Drum Web app, the test the system, the team stimulated Delhi's east, south, north and central corridors, which are accounting for a different traffic, road quality and even the pollution patterns, so that the efficiency of this Drum Web app can be accurately tested. So the results showed that a shorter or faster routes often pass through the polluted zones, offsetting time or distance gains. Right. So this is the Drum Web app that has been developed by the professor and students at IIT Kharagpur to reduce the level of to reduce the exposure of pollution on commuters. Right. So however, as I have already told you that the World Air Quality Index is released by the World Health Organization, right? So in fact, India is among the 10 most polluted countries in the world, right? So you can see here Chad, most polluted country, followed by Bangladesh, Pakistan, Congo and India. So one of the most polluted countries in the world. So in fact, it is being said that there are 20 most polluted cities in the world, and first is Barnihat, which is located in Meghalaya, India, and second most polluted is Delhi, India. Right, so these are in fact India also has a number of cities which are exposed to the highest levels of the pollution as well, right? So therefore there is a significantly higher levels of mortality rates or deaths because of the air pollution, and there is a significant need to reduce the exposure of people to the levels of air pollution to improve air quality and also to improve living standards and life expectancy of the people as well. So next important topic is the diphtheria outbreak that took place in Western Europe, and we will understand about the diphtheria and which pathogen it actually causes, and what are its symptoms. Everything we'll try to understand about diphtheria. So diphtheria has again resurfaced in Western Europe, so thereby marking the largest outbreak of diphtheria in 70 years. And in fact, the resurgence of diphtheria in 2022 in Western Europe, so this has been primarily affecting the vulnerable populations. So vulnerable populations in Europe, particularly those people who are homeless and those who are migrants from Afghanistan, migrants from Africa. So they were the vulnerable populations, and diphtheria is now mostly infecting the vulnerable population in Western Europe. So the World Health Organization has even classified diphtheria as a highly contagious bacterial disease. So diphtheria is caused by the bacteria and it is also highly contagious. That actually means that the diphtheria would spread from one human being to another human being easily. So that is a highly contagious bacterial infection, and in fact diphtheria also poses health risks, especially for people who are not vaccinated. And in fact the fatality rate of diphtheria is around 30%. So that essentially means that imagine if 100 people are infected with the diphtheria, so around 30 people would die. So that is the fatality rate of diphtheria. Now if we talk about diphtheria in a more detailed way, so diphtheria is caused by a bacterium called a Corynebacterium diphtheriae. So Corynebacterium diphtheriae is the pathogen which actually causes a diphtheria infection, and it primarily affects or attacks the respiratory tract, but it can also affect the skin of the individuals as well. The symptoms include sore throat, fever, swollen neck, glands. So these are the main symptoms of diphtheria. And even the disease can lead to severe complications including heart, nerve damage due to the toxin which is produced by the Corynebacterium diphtheriae. And so vaccination is available, and vaccination is also crucial for the prevention. So most of the people who are homeless and who are migrants from Africa and Afghanistan who are now infected with the diphtheria in Western Europe, most of them don't have vaccination, or they never administered vaccination for the diphtheria, and that's why it has been now infecting the vulnerable populations in Western Europe. And in fact In 2022, Europe recorded 362 cases of diphtheria with a total of 536 cases and 3 fatalities reported since then. And even so, most of the infected people are young males who had recently migrated from Afghanistan, Syria, and other countries in West Asia and even Africa as well. However, this outbreak was not traced back to their countries of origin, but this outbreak, so they are exposed to the Corynebacterium diphtheriae while on their way to Europe from their home countries, right? So during their migration journeys, they are expected to expose themselves towards this bacterium, and that has caused diphtheria among most of the migrant and vulnerable populations in the Western Europe. So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. And if you like a lecture, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.